that day in the hospital when the doctor said to us, like, we think it's cancer. It's sort of like you hear the words, but it doesn't go through your mind. We had our whole life sort of planned. We were meant to get married in October this year, and we had heaps of lovely things planned, but it does change your whole outlook on life completely, but in a good way where you're grateful for every day a lot more.
Leukemia is a form of blood cancer. Essentially develops in the bone marrow, so within inside of the bones, because that's where all blood cells originally form. So leukemia is essentially a blood cell that goes rogue and it doesn't develop properly. Behind all of that, you have to have the funding to support the research. The key is, I think, hard work, having a good team around you as well, and having good support partners like Toward a Cure to really have the same vision and goal for children with cancer.
The Leukaemia Foundation raised money for a number of different revenue streams. LifeRide in particular, or the Paternity Care Partnership, the funds are directed to two primary areas that we service. So one is our accommodation services, which are vitally important to regional patients, people living outside of metropolitan areas that often need life-saving treatment very quickly. The second area that we like to invest in as an organisation, because we really are committed to finding a better outcome. We have a big goal ahead of us for 2035. We want to see 0 lives lost to blood cancer. So to achieve this, we're very committed to research, and the money that is raised from LifeRide will be directed to a research project with the Blood Transport and Cell Therapy Centre. We can find better diagnostic tools, we can find better treatments and better outcomes for patients, not only in their survival rates, but also in their quality of life, which is ultimately what we'd like to see happen.
The history is, in children with leukemia, when we go back to 1960, the 5 or 10 year survival is about 10 or 20%. And now we are talking, 40, 50 years later, we are talking about 90%. So that's a great improvement. But that doesn't really capture the whole, or that doesn't represent the whole picture, because we still have children have high-risk leukemia. The prognosis is below 50%, like infants with leukemia. So there are a lot more work focusing on this area, and I would say that in the next 10-20 years we hope to bring this we get rid of this high risk group, so that children have leukemia will have much better prognosis. And also, although those children recover or have remission from leukemia, quite often they suffer from side effect as well. There's a long-term side effect we're talking about. So the other arm of our research is looking at how we're going to come up with a therapy that have less side effect. So that's another interesting area. We're not just talking about the prognosis, we're also talking about how to reduce the adverse effect. Cancer is getting more common now, but I think in children particularly, they are young and they are fragile, and I think it's really important that they get the support. As a pharmacist, we're interested, or I'm interested in therapy. So we want to come up with a novel therapy that can help children with leukemia. And my research focus on a different angle, slightly different angle from the previous research, that most of the therapy focus on the cancer cells, but my research mainly focus on the cells surrounding the cancer cells, or surrounding the leukemia cells in the bone marrow. Because what we learn from solid tumor like breast cancer or prostate cancer, that surrounding cells play a very important role in supporting the cancer cell growth, and also play a role in the resistance to therapy as well. However, this area is not quite developed in terms of children with leukemia. So we want to look at how the leukemia cells interact with the surrounding cells. Can we come up with a therapy that can target the surrounding cells so that they are not talking to each other, so that the conventional chemotherapy is easier to kill the leukemia cells? as a father of 3 children, I treasure the time that I spend with them. But at the same time, I want, other parents also can have quality time with their children. So therefore, I think my work is important. When you see at the Perth Children's Hospital lots of children with cancer, and it's not really fair to the parents that could not spend quality time with them. So I think that also motivates me to continue my work.
Leukemia has been the sort of success story of childhood cancer. In the late 1940s, no child with leukemia survived, as they were all treated with palliative intent. In that time period, someone actually decided to give chemotherapy to 5 children with leukemia, and it induced a remission, so the leukemia went away. But because it was just one drug, it eventually came back, and the children eventually passed away. But since then, we've subsequently built on those treatments and introduced more and more chemotherapy through clinical trials and investigating those drugs within the laboratory, so that now we're at a stage where for many leukemias the survival and outcomes are very, very good. So more than 85% of children survive from their leukemia. However, there's still a significant number of subtypes that have really, really bad outcomes. So one of the examples is little babies with leukemia, so they're children under 1 year of age, and they unfortunately still have very, very bad outcomes where less than 40% of them survive. I've really wanted to try and improve the outcome for little babies with leukemia. So what we do is that, I'm fortunate that I work in the clinic as well as in the research laboratory. Every patient that comes in with leukemia, we ask the child and the family as to whether they're able to donate a sample of their leukemia for research in the laboratory. Then what we do is we use those samples to generate models of the leukemia in the laboratory that can sort of mimic what happens in humans. What we look to do is generate those models and then test sort of new drugs and drugs that have never been used in the clinic on those models to see whether they have an effect on the leukemia cells. And ultimately what we then aim to do is if we find any sort of treatments that look really promising and effective in the research laboratory, we then aim to translate them into clinical practice, into clinical trials, to see whether they have a beneficial effect to the actual treatment of children with the leukemia. Because ultimately it's amazing to be able to deliver new treatments to children, but to actually do that sometimes you have to understand what happens how does a leukemia develop, what happens when it's in the body, how does it affect the sort of environment surrounding the leukemia, because ultimately that will help us to develop new treatments into the future.
We've just launched one-of-a-kind State of the Nation report, right? Basically the lay of the land in blood cancer, and that State of the Nation report has identified and discovered that blood cancer is a far bigger issue than what we previously thought. Currently we have 41 people diagnosed every day. That is typically 36, every 36 minutes a new diagnosis. So we're looking at about 110,000 people living with the blood cancer currently in Australia, of which sadly 7,500 or more will lose their lives this year alone. The report has discovered that looking forward to that 2035 vision, that we're looking at up to potentially projected 275,000 people living with blood cancer, which equates to up to 41 people losing their lives every day, every 2 hours. So it's a really big problem. It's a problem that's been presented now to government and parliament to set up a national task force, because it is going to impact on our economy and our workforce, and obviously that's a lot of people that may be touched and be affected, families as well. by the blood cancer journey. So we are committed. We would like to see that a reality. We also want to see improved quality of life for people on that journey.
For me, I'm not sure how you do it without having a partner and close family and that. Like, I know that you can get help from people through the hospital and other doctors and that, but I've never been one to talk to people like that. I've always been able to lean on family and friends quite well. So I think that's huge.
It changes your whole life, everything, like the way that you live, the way that you eat, the way that you know, even when you're just driving or going for a walk around the block, and when you see something like we were saying the other day, when you're sitting on the beach, like the beach doesn't feel like the beach anymore. It just feels like this is a special moment that you have to cherish. So every day is like that now. It's not just like waking up and going outside. It's like, wow, I'm alive today. Like, we've made it through another day and we're very lucky.